Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about what makes memorable games.
Yes.
That's RPG games. There's board games, but we could talk about that at a different time.
So what makes an RPG memorable? Almost any gamer that's been playing for a while or even a short time will regale you with experiences that they've had. And for the most part, a lot of people don't like hearing those kind of tales because they're important to that player because they experienced it, and other people they tell didn't experience it, and so it's not as compelling to them and as interesting. But some of them are pretty funny.
Unless you get together with the same people or like Saul, they retell their stories from 20 years ago, 30 years ago to each other.
40 years ago.
And then they laugh about it because they were all there.
Correct. There's that. And it just, you're right. Those are things that make a game memorable. That, even to this, like Jolene said, I can remember things that happened 30 years ago in a game. I don't remember. I might not even remember the whole adventure, but I remember certain things that happened, and for one reason or another, it sticks in your head. So we compiled a little bit of a list of what we thought would make your game memorable. And sometimes you can't really plan it, right? Sometimes it just happens. Something, being that it's a game of luck and there's dice involved, and I think it makes it...
Dice are one of the things that make most games memorable one way or the other, especially if... So we played in this... Saul ran a Star Trek adventure game.
Right.
It was a play test, and there was this bridge that we had to cross. It was a wooden bridge.
No,
it was like logs across the...
I think it was a stone bridge. It was a big stone that fell over a crevasse.
And you didn't even have to... It was a tree that fell over.
Oh, it was a tree. That's what it was.
And you didn't even have to roll high or anything. You just had to not roll a 1 or something, right?
It was.
Or you couldn't roll low.
You couldn't roll a 20, which is a complication.
Well, I fell off that bridge, twisted my ankle, and they had to carry me out of the ravine. It slowed us down.
I think more than one person failed.
Yes. I think Chris failed too. At least 2 or 3 of us failed. It was
funny, which was funny because it wasn't very hard for people to make it across the bridge,
and it wasn't even a scene that should have been memorable, but because people failed the rolls, it turned into like a 15-minute scene training.
Yes, and try to save people and stuff like that. And it did have consequences because, you guys were slowed down.
Yes.
And so you guys couldn't get to the place where you needed to be as quickly as you wanted to. And so it affected the whole game. But I think the funny part is I think there was there was quite a few of you playing.
Yeah.
6 or 7 of you. And half the party had a problem crossing the bridge.
And the funny thing is then just this weekend when we played in one of our friends' games, who was there when we did that.
Yes, Jim
in
was
fact,
played.
Felipe, Jem, Sip, and Augustine.
Yes.
We're all there. And there was this scene, and he says, it's these rocks across a river. It shouldn't be hard. It's not a difficult.
I think it was DC 10.
Yeah. I rolled a 2. I fell into the water. I went down the rapids. Saul's character, Chatterwick, who's a gnome, tried to save me and fell into the water also.
Yeah.
Which ensued about 20 minutes of, besides Mike and Jim trying to figure out who was on what side of the river.
There was that.
It's a memorable scene because, 1, it reminded me of the other scene, and 2, it was like the dice did it, right? You just rolled the wrong number. And so the dice can either totally make the scene this amazing thing where you kill the dragon, or you win whatever the battle, or you fall into the river because you rolled a 2.
Well, I think what's funny is that dice can make the mundane interesting, right? Like just crossing the river, it's a DC 10, and and it was you athletics or acrobatics, so you can use your strength or your dexterity. So you get
No, he said you had to use I had to use
athletics.
Yeah.
Oh, so okay, I don't get a bonus for that. So most adventures have a higher strength, so you get a little bit of a plus there, right? And so you, by all intents and purposes, should have made it.
I should have,
but
I didn't.
You didn't. Simple. Those 2 things. I think if any bridge that you have to cross, and you have to roll to cross it, that's always dangerous, no matter what. No matter
what they tell you. No matter what they tell you.
What the odds are.
When you have to roll those dice to cross that bridge, it's not always as easy as it looks.
So I think that's the comic experience.
That is the comic experience of the game. Yeah,
because things that make you laugh, and especially to make the whole table just erupt in laughter, I think most people are going to remember that, because that's such a laughter and laughing together. I think, as a group, as social animals that we are, we all really love that. I mean, I think, playing role-playing games is a storytelling.
It's a shared experience.
It's a story. Yeah, it's a shared, but storytelling. And that's probably one of the oldest forms of entertainment we as humans have, since we've been able to communicate. So when everybody's laughing together, people remember good jokes and they remember funny things. And I think that's probably where this comes from, why we remember that scene. I remember back, I was probably in my teens, so it was,
a while ago,
32 years ago. We were playing in Salinas, and I was playing a Cavalier. They had just came out with the Cavalier class in AD&D. So I was playing the Cavalier, and so at one point, I'm playing a really
charismatic.
Not charismatic, but I was a real macho type of Cavalier. At one point, for some reason, we're trying to sneak into this house, right, or this mansion, and all of a sudden, out of this doorway opens, and there's this huge, figure, and it looked like it was like 12 feet, and we were only like first or second level, right? So, we must have just saw what is it, the Princess Bride or something. So this thing that looked like the silhouette of Andre the Giant, right? He was huge. So I'm like, giant, and I went running, right? I took off running, and everybody in the table started laughing, because they already knew that they had gone in front of me and they had set me up. So it was it was like a straw. It was like a scarecrow, and it was lit from behind, so it made the shadow bigger. So they all started laughing at me for, here's this courageous Cavalier, running away from literally shadow. So they remember that, and I get ribbed about that all the time. And I kind of knew what it was up, so I went with it, right? But it was just extremely funny. It was, at the time, and so I still remember that. In fact, Mike especially will rib me about that every once in a while, about my
because he
called me the communist Cavalier, something like that. So yeah, so funny things can happen that can last a lifetime, right?
Silly character things happen also. Like, I remember Augustine and Alan Augustine had this idea to sell chairs, and
they wanted money.
They wanted money.
They were pretty poor at the time,
and so him and Alan got all these chairs that from the city, right? And Augustine goes, "Okay, I'll sell them to people." And so the joke became, because we had this pavilion that Ian stole from a wizard. They put the chairs in the pavilion, and so there would always be this group of this huge amount of chairs in this pavilion that, was like a huge bag of holding, right?
Yes.
And wherever we went, Augustine's all, okay, let's try to sell the chairs. Or we got to take all the chairs out of the pavilion.
It was funny. And so it was a running gag for them, and they loved it.
Still is.
They still love that thing, and they still love, and even though he's like 11th level, so he goes, I got chairs to sell. Because I forget what happened.
Which makes everybody laugh, so people are going to remember that. And then it's just a joke between our families, right? And our friends that play with us, because we're the only ones that ever hear it. Nobody else is going to think that's funny, right? But it's very memorable to the people playing the game. And
then there was one funny thing. I thought it was funny, and Steve didn't think it was funny. They were on this boat, right? They was on a sailing ship, and they were. I don't know if they were being.
Saul has told this story before.
Yeah, and they were being attacked or something.
We were.
Well, yeah, you were.
And we were dying.
They were pretty bad straits. So at one point, Ian's character is a druid, I believe.
Yes.
And he's able to shapeshift. So he he jumps off the ship and shapeshifts into a shark.
And swims away.
And that really
pissed off his dad greatly.
His dad was played, and they were bad. I mean, they were, there were a couple everybody was a couple hit points from going down, and so and I don't think he was even injured. I think he was in pretty good shape. If he had
no, he was scared and wanted to get away from the fight.
Yes.
And by scared, I mean his character was scared.
Yes. He was scared of losing his character.
Yeah, he didn't want to lose his character.
So he jumps into the water. He's a shark, and his dad goes, "What are you doing?" and it all
incredulously,
and it innocently voice says, because he was younger. He was like 14, 13 or 14, 13. And he's like, because there was a rowboat, right? There was some men on a rowboat. And he goes, "I'm gonna go and attack these guys from going on the ship." And he goes, and his dad goes, "Who cares about those guys on the rowboat? We're dying on this boat. Get back here." And I go, you know what? You can't really talk to him because he's literally under the water and he can't hear you. And then what's really funny is Ian gets his biggest smile on his face because he knows that I'm right? And so he goes, "I don't hear him, do I?" I go, "No." He goes, and so he's circling the rowboat, preventing them from rowing, right? Because they're trying to attack the shark. And so it was funny, but probably frustrating for his dad, and everybody else is just like shaking their head, going, "Oh, but that's Ian. He's gonna, he
doesn't want to lose his character.
Abandon ship. Literally.
Yeah. I gotta go. Sorry.
I got this great idea to prevent more people from coming, but that just means
so that makes it memorable, right?
Yes. It was funny.
What are some of the other things that make games memorable? Emotional entanglements.
Yeah, I haven't had too many of those in a game. I don't usually run those kind of games.
I don't mean romantic.
What?
I mean like emotional things for your characters, like when one of the characters dived off the ship and to his death.
Oh.
When in Call of Cthulhu we had to leave the old man on the side of the road, or we didn't. Yeah. It was a choice. Those kind of things. What's your moral dilemma, your emotional attachment to different things?
Oh, those are definitely can make a game very memorable. Kathy and Annette, struggling with this guy in space opera, whether they want to bring him to the spaceport, to bring him to the law or to justice,
or space him,
or mete out their own justice because this guy was such a terrible person.
Saul will never forget that.
No, I won't, and I'm sure they, Kathy might have forgotten it, but
I doubt it.
But I think if I remind her, she'll probably remember it, and the consternation that both of them had, right? Because they both of them had this. They didn't want to kill this person who was like, what is it? He's a prisoner, right? And, you're not supposed to kill prisoners. You're not supposed, but he was such a vile, and he was vile. I was purposely making him as
vile as possible.
As vile as possible, without a shred of humanity left in him. And I pushed him into that direction, right? He was like, and he goes, all it takes for you to do, they were like serious. They go, all it takes for us to do this, not space you, is to admit what you did was wrong. And he goes, how can I admit that when I'm being paid by the same government that pays you? And then that was too much for them to bear, right?
That was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. So out he went, and I was still talking. That happened in the mid-90s.
Yes.
I
was just thinking also on quirky characters. Sometimes a voice or a mannerism that the character does all the time. And I'm specifically thinking about your brother in a recent game that we played with Mike. We were doing it on Roll20 because of the times that we're in, but he had a voice changer.
Oh, jeez.
And he was trying to make this dwarf sound really gravelly, because once he took the voice changer off, that's what he did, a voice that made the dwarf sound, really gravelly. I can't do it, of course. But when he was using the voice changer, you couldn't understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
So it's very memorable to me. And in that game also, one of the guys was playing a halfling, and he gave him a voice of a little kid voice.
Yes.
So those kind of things make the game very memorable.
Yeah, something quirky that's a little odd. Yeah, that definitely does make you remember things. We were talking about funny things. Even though I wasn't playing in the game, it was a convention game. You mentioned the pizza box. Mm-hmm. That had a ticking alarm clock in it, and so that's just a prop that just was hilarious, and everybody was laughing. And I wasn't even in the game. I had just gone with Kathy because she was gonna play in the game and hadn't played in a game at a convention before, so she was a little nervous. So after that scene, I'm like, I think she's fine. I guess it went off pretty well. So funny things that happen like that, or even intentionally funny things, I think I'll never forget that pizza box. You know, it was a really good prop too.
It was a paranoia game too, so it made perfect sense that it was a bomb.
So you mentioned the character that sacrificed himself. He didn't just jump off a ship. You know, they were an airship. But what happened was this bad guy had like a suicide bomb or something, or he had a bomb on him and was gonna blow up the airship. Right? The airships aren't really sturdy.
They're sturdy. They're just in the air.
Right. Well, they're
precarious. Yes.
Bombs could be
holes in airships probably aren't good.
in the big old huge balloon part. So the character, the player character, decides that the only way he could save it, because the thing was flying, and so he jumps off the boat and like hugs them, and it was a winged creature, so he grabs the wings and hugs the wings and prevents it from flying. So they both go, falling. And
luckily for me, I knew that Jason wanted to switch characters at that point in time, so I wasn't shocked. Half the people at the table weren't shocked, but a couple of them were a little on the. Yeah,
they were shocked.
Yeah. What?
Yes, and I think it was a very memorable moment. And he didn't want to change characters. That was one reason. But the situation could have been, even if he wanted to keep that character, I could have given him that scene, right? That chance. I go, well, as a GM, as if you give these players moral dilemmas and they either act or don't act. Either way, it's going to be memorable. And in this case, it was. I mean, everybody remembers that point when he goes, hugs that dude, and they both fall, and then the bomb goes off, and there's no more of that character. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty neat, and I think everybody remembers that scene. I mean, everybody's going to remember that,
especially the people that weren't prepared for it. They're going, well, can't we save him? Can we get down to the ground and he should be okay? He must be fine.
No, he wasn't. I think it was fun. I think it was a neat idea. And I think when you, as a GM, when you set up that kind of encounter or that situation, it could be a very memorable scene.
Most of the games that you play, there's going to be moral dilemmas or character entanglements with other people. As in, are you going to try to talk to the dragon? Are you going to try to fight the dragon? Are you going to ask the townspeople what's going on versus kill them all? I mean, that's because you are a bunch of heavily armed people just walking around. Right. So to make it memorable, you should probably not go the bad way, is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
So other things that make a game memorable is the clutch roll, right? Usually, or the bad roll, right? When you don't make the clutch roll.
Yeah.
And I think
we talked about that part.
Yeah. So I remember this one scene where one of my players, they got into this big battle with bugbears and stuff like that, and they were going down left and right, and they were from both sides. Both players and the creatures were being dispatched or knocked down, and I think it came down to just one character, which was Sip's character, who was playing Elv, basically was playing Legolas, right?
He was trying to play Legolas.
Yes, this is right around 2000, right after 2000, so right after the movies came out, or the original movie came out. Fellowship of the Ring. It was around 2003, 2004. And we had just started playing 3rd edition. So it was probably 2002. So it was funny because they were all, it was a big group. I had like 10 players at the time. And at this point, I think only 8 players had showed up. But it's still a big group. And they had gone into this, battle with these bugbears and there was some other type of creatures. I forget what they were, but it was this running battle, right? They were all lower, there were a whole bunch of them all over the field. And finally, everybody had gone down except for the ranger. I think it was a ranger.
Yeah.
He had worked himself up onto a small hill, and there was like 4 bugbears left, and they were all hurt. So I was keeping track of their hit points and everything. He's shooting his bow and he's knocking them out, and he had like 1 arrow left, and he had 1 bugbear left, and I'm like, and then he had a sword, but that wasn't his primary, way of fighting. He really liked shooting arrows. So it came down to one roll. And so everybody's watching this, him, he has the dice in his hand. He's, he's shaking his
no pressure at all. No pressure at all.
And so he rolls the dice and he's able to dispatch the thing and literally save the whole party. I had never had a toady party kill. I've never had one, but that's about as close as I got. And it wasn't like I was trying to. I was just like, because they should have been able to defeat the creatures pretty solidly, but they were rolling really badly and I was rolling really well. And since I roll out in the open, it was just like, they're like, there was nothing I can do and there was nothing they could say.
Because you can't fudge the dice when everybody sees what you're rolling.
But it was pretty memorable.
It does make it very memorable, and a lot of battle scenes are memorable, right?
Right.
The battle scenes where, you're not sure how you're going to get to that shaman to kill it so the other things will run away, because there's way too many of them for you to defeat.
Even when you dimension door behind the shaman and his the shaman,
that was a mistake on my part.
with the rogue, I mean, the rogue was pretty hurt too, and then you said you went down, right?
I was like at 2 hit points or something, 1 hit point.
Oh, so you weren't knocked out.
I might have been at 0. Yeah.
And then Alan was already hurt, or he was not a fighter, and he was fighting this guy. And
he was trying.
And so he was able to stay alive long enough for the other group, the group he left behind, to catch up and.
It did make them fight faster and harder and with more enthusiasm.
I mean, that's a neat scene and a neat memory. I mean, you won't forget that. No. You learned a lesson about Dimension Door.
I don't like that spell anymore.
I noticed since then you have not used it.
Well, I haven't been playing either. I've been running the game now. So.
Yes, that's hilarious. So the moral dilemma, we talked about that. All these are things that you should include in your game, right? Because what they do is they cause your game to be more, not just more memorable, which is what we're talking about, but more interesting, right? When you have funny scenes and stuff like that, that makes for a fun session.
Right. And I think another thing that you should think about making your games memorable are just the normal things, like the setting of your game, where you play it. If it's a home game and you play at your house, when you could do that, people would like, for our group, snacks are important.
Oh,
snacks.
You're talking about real
drinks.
stuff.
Yeah, real stuff. The things that the kids are going to remember, or your friends, right?
Yeah.
You're going to remember playing around your mom's kitchen table. You're going to remember setting up the tables, everybody putting out the mat, putting out snacks, chit chat. All of those things make games not only comfortable but memorable for later on, right? For what the kids think about stuff. The kids still remember and loved, and one of the reasons we always have snacks is because when we first started playing with them, we took them to Legends comic store or Legends gaming store at the Valco Mall, which has been totally torn down now. But there was they could buy a soda and chips and stuff there. So they would do that, right? Or we would go to the food court. And so it was a whole big thing for them. Food was part of the game because they were little, right? So that kept them, that was a part of it, and they remember that. So whenever we go to play a game, whether we're at a convention or at home, one of the questions that they always ask is, what are we going to have for snacks? So Steve and I always try to make sure that there's plenty of snacks. Now that they're older, they're more like hors d'oeuvres and stuff like that, or
they
pizza.
Still like snacks.
Yeah, they love snacks.
They still like their Chex Mix and stuff.
So those kind of things, right?
There is that. There's the whole experience that causes it to be memorable, right?
Yeah.
Where you meet. We still have memories of the Scout House. We still have memories of the library. It's the Steinbeck Library in Salinas.
I still remember going down into the basement of my brother's friends when I was a teenager going, what am I doing?
I remember playing in our friend Dave, the Blake's house in Salinas. They had a basement. It's an old Victorian style house, and we played down there. We played Traveler. I can barely remember the game, but I definitely remember the location. So you're right. Outside of the game, you make memories, and things are memorable by the food. And when we go to Cowie's house, she puts out that spread that like no gamer
she always
has
has
ever.
Quiche. I love that. Quiche and salami.
I don't.
It's just amazing.
I'm not a quiche fan, but yeah, she And what's funny about her spread is that it's so ungamer like, right? She has fruits and vegetables, crackers and salami. And
it's perfect for the people that we play with there,
yes.
right? And us.
Yes.
It's a nice little.
I think we talked about it before, how deciding where to play before we even had met each other, right? Cowie goes, well, we could play at my place. It's nice and big, and she has a gorgeous house, and it's really nice and it's large. And she has this huge table that's perfect for up to like 10 people probably. And so one of the other players was like, well, we could do it at our house too, my house, because he probably doesn't want to get up and have to drive somewhere, I would run it at my place if I.
But ours is very small.
Yeah, we don't have that much room. But once it was Morgan who wanted to go over there. Who goes, we should play. Go back and forth.
But then when he realized that Cowie was putting food out, that was it.
That was it. And so in fact, I remember. I go, next time we play, we go to your place. Morgan goes, no, and he has his mouth full. Well, no, it's okay. We can just keep playing here. And I thought it was funny, so much more. I wanted to play at his house,
which is wonderful because if you have a friend like that has a nice place and they provide you with these delicious.
Yeah. You've gone.
Food. Yeah,
you've gone to Cowie's house.
Yeah.
She puts out cakes and stuff like that. It's unbelievable.
And so that's cool. Now we don't get to do that. We don't get to experience that. We still get to play with Cowie, but it's on Roll20 and Zoom, so it's not quite the same. But also, I think another thing that makes games memorable, and I'm thinking about conventions right now.
Oh wow!
Is like all of the things, the prep that GMs do for games. There's the Star Trek game we played in where they actually had made it so that you could talk to somebody on a view screen, right?
That was so cool. And it was really neat.
Things like that, or the fact that the GM takes all this time to create pictures of the characters and in the character makes all the characters, and they have it set out where you get to pick who you want to play. There's a picture of them. There's notes that you need, secrets, all kinds of different things. So it depends on the way the room is set up. Like the other Star Trek game that we play in, the guy puts up pictures on the wall.
Yes.
And
he decorates the place.
And he brings, the bridge of Next Generation, and he has action figures.
That's hilarious. Yes. The action figures. You're right. I remember that game, and I remember both games. And the other one was like really technical, right? The one where we're talking to the guy on the view screen. Well, it wasn't a view screen. I mean, it wasn't like a monitor. They had like a projector, and they were putting it on the wall.
Yes.
And so the guy was dressed. He had like a Star Trek uniform, commander uniform on, and he's like, like the typical view screen. Where the captain of the ship is talking to somebody from the Federation and he's being given a mission.
Yes.
And so it was hilarious. It was funny and it was amazing, and it worked. There were little glitches, here and there.
But there always are when you're trying to do technical stuff.
I forget what their glitch was, but when it got it to work, it was pretty amazing. That we're like, whoa.
It was the phone connection to the projector, I think it was.
Yeah.
But they fixed it, and then it was pretty cool. So those kind of things really always make games memorable.
Yes.
I remember with the kids in the kids' room at Dundercon, there's this older guy. I don't know his name, but he used to have hero clicks that he would play with them. These hero clicks,
right.
And he would give them gold
coins.
Yes. Real money coins.
Yeah, gold dollars. The US dollars. That for some reason they were tinted gold.
Yeah.
They look goldish.
Yeah.
And so he at the very end of they would pick up treasure, and then he would literally give them $1 coins.
And the boys will never forget that, and they loved that.
Yes.
Right. So that was like and it was kind of cool. It was it was cool. They got to play.
It was a dungeon.
Yeah, and they were playing with the HeroClix. He gave them the HeroClix boxes, and then
that's right.
And they got gold coins out of it, real money, which they were like totally amazed by. And
they were 8 and 6 and 7.
So those are things that make things memorable, right?
Right. That was pretty neat. So there's all kinds of things that can happen in the game that will make a scene memorable, and a lot of times there's just no way you can tell when that's going to happen.
You never know.
And some of them you can, right? Like the end of a campaign.
Yeah.
Like the slaying of the dragon, or the slaying or or the conclusion of a campaign.
Or when we were helping the king of the giants, which one was it? The
Storm King's Thunder?
Storm, yeah. And they gave us all this ridiculous stuff at the end.
Yes.
When we, the kids were like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Are they going?
Yes. Yeah, there
The
is
treasure you get at
there
the
is
end.
the treasure at the end of the like, and some of it, like the pavilion, right? That was something that I just kind of threw in there, and that, you know, and it might have been a mistake at the time, but so the pavilion is this, like, you just, as like a command word, it sets itself up, and it's a big, huge pavilion, but it's like Jolene said, it's kind of like this large, interdimensional portal thing that's like a huge bag of holding. So everything in it is like the bed and everything just is set up.
Just don't put live things in it. We learned.
What did you guys put in there? A horse?
I don't remember, but it didn't. It wasn't good.
So,
but also, the pavilion comes with a wizard that's trying to get it back.
well, yeah, because they stole it from this guy
Yeah.
who was a wizard, and so. He's a recurring bad guy. So that's another one, is a reoccurring bad guy. That's always good to make a thing memorable. Your game memorable is NPCs that really are like over the top.
Yeah.
Or just are a pain in the butt to the characters, right? They show up at the worst times or the best times, and make things interesting for the characters.
Yes.
So memorable things, a lot of times you just can't, you can't force them. They just happen. Bridges, we've talked about bridges, right? Throw a bridge in there and make it a simple DC or skill check and watch them fall off that bridge like there's no tomorrow.
Well, and like some games, people learn, I can't sneak if I have armor on, right? But right at the beginning, everybody wants to sneak until they realize that they're a paladin and they're going to make a lot of noise, right? They got chainmail or something and it's not going to work. But those kind of things make it memorable when everybody's trying to make a sneak roll. That it goes back to the dice, right? And sometimes even good sneakers can't sneak. So
yes. Oh, there's that, right?
Yeah.
When the paladin in chainmail is sneaking by the orcs and the rogue, that's his specialty, is wearing leather armor, rolls a 1. There you go.
He runs into the paladin and makes clanky noises.
He steps on a rat trap.
Those are the things that your players will remember for a long time.
Yeah. So I think for me, that's why we play, right? We play to be entertained, but at the same time, we play to have these great experiences, and because they're fantastic experiences, they're going to be stick with us for the rest of our lives. And I think that's what's so special about role-playing games. I mean, you could have that experience in a board game, but I think role-playing games, it's much more likely to happen, and it happens more often because that, that's what we are. We are social creatures, and we like telling stories, and that's what we're doing.
So there you go. Go out, make your memories. And this is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
Have a good day.